In one of my more recent videos, I briefly explained the 8 elements of music and why they matter. In this video, I'll be elaborating on the concept of rhythm and how to use it. I'll also give you ways to practice these concepts in your day-to-day life. Welcome to Music Theories. This channel is my dedicated space for all things music, music theory, and music history. Rhythm, in its most basic sense, is designated patterns of sound and silence in a piece of music. Rhythm specifies not only when a sound is played or not played, but how long it is played or not played. We've already covered the first 3 basic components of rhythm: beat, tempo, and meter. But just to recap, a beat is the basic unit of time in music. This is the pulse that is within a song. It is measured, or monitored rather, by either a percussion player or a device called a metronome. Musicians use metronomes to practice, but in the context of recording or performing live, a metronome can also be called a click track. They're the exact same thing. Tempo is the frequency of this beat, measured in beats per minute, more commonly referred to as BPM. The higher the BPM, the faster the song is. Duration is how long a sound or silence lasts, typically notated using music notes and rests. I explain notation and duration in this video here. And lastly, meter is the organization of these beats and durations. These are recurring patterns throughout the piece. This is notated by time signatures and organized into measures. In addition to that, we have strong beats and weak beats, accents and syncopation. There's also what's called groove. I will cover a majority of these topics in this video, but at a surface level. There's much to learn about each of these things, so there'll be lots of videos to come. Let's start with the most important. What is a beat? Each song you hear has a beat to it. It's what I like to refer to as the song's heartbeat. You can't always hear it, but you can feel it. It's always there. This is how musicians play together. They're each following this steady beat. This is what drummers or band leaders are referring to when they count the band in.
One, two, three, four. 1, 2, 3.
Who says I can't get stoned?
1, 2, 3,
For the most part, the beat remains completely steady and unchanged throughout a song. There are some exceptions, but we'll talk about that later. This is the difference between beat and rhythm. Rhythm involves patterns created on and around the beat. Therefore, it's variable throughout a piece. Finding the beat of a song is easy, but it does require practice. I'm going to show you how to practice that in just a bit, but first, you need to understand the concept of strong and weak beats. Strong beats and weak beats define how the music is felt. This is similar to the way we emphasize certain words in our phrases when we speak. They can also be referred to as stressed and unstressed. Strong beats and weak beats depend on the time signature. In 4/4 time, 1 is the strongest, also called the downbeat. 3 is also strong, but not quite as strong. Beats 2 and 4 are considered weak beats. They're also often called the backbeat, the upbeat, or the offbeat. A very obvious example of this is if you sing Mary Had a Little Lamb or the ABCs. But just because they're sometimes called weak doesn't mean they're less vital to the feel. I hesitate to even call them weak beats because I think some may interpret that in a way that's not helpful. But as an example in pop music, parts of the melody in Set Fire to the Rain by Adele have a very clear accent on the downbeat.
I let it fall, my heart, and does it fail? You rose to claim it. It was dark, and I was over, until you kissed my lips, and you saved me.
In 3/4, the strong beat is on 1, while the weak are 2 and 3. This is what gives every waltz its dancey feeling. You can hear this clearly in Piano Man by Billy Joel.
Sing us a song, you're the piano man. Sing us a song tonight. Well, we're all in the mood for a melody. And you got
But 3/4 is not the only time signature that's dancey. In 2/4, there's simply one strong beat and one weak beat. Many tangos are in 2/4 time and are obviously very danceable. Check out the famous Habanera from the opera Carmen. Or La Cumparsita by Gerardo Matos Rodriguez. You'll notice the emphasis on the downbeat. In 6/8, the strong beats are on 1 and 4, and the weak on 2, 3, 5, and 6. This can be heard clearly in If I Ain't Got You by Alicia Keys.
Some people live for the fortune. Some people live just for the fame. Some people live.
Now, even though we call these beats strong, it doesn't necessarily mean we need to emphasize them. It's more or less how these beats naturally fall. The second is weak in comparison to the downbeat, and so the third is strong in comparison to the second. Putting intentional emphasis on a particular beat is called an accent. Accents add a bit of flair to our regular rhythms by making certain beats stand out. Accents can be played by varying the dynamics, the duration, or even the time. When a musician chooses to steadily accent beats that aren't normally accented, it's called syncopation. In 4/4 time, where there are 4 beats per measure, this could be emphasis on 2 and 4 instead of the normal 1 and 3. Or emphasis on the eighth notes between 1, 2, 3, and 4. These eighth notes are called subdivisions. Syncopation is a defining characteristic in many types of music, including jazz, reggae, funk, salsa, and bossa nova, though it's not exclusive to these genres. Syncopation first became widely popular in American pop music through a genre called ragtime. This is what gives The Entertainer by Scott Joplin its bounce. There's emphasis on 2 and 4 rather than on 1 and 3. But let's look at some examples that are a little more modern. Though there is a clear, steady 4 on the floor kick beat, Master Blaster by Stevie Wonder also emphasizes 2 and 4 using the harmony. Again, looking at Set Fire to the Rain by Adele, you can hear syncopation specifically in this section of the chorus melody. The melody is placed to accent the eighth notes between 1, 2, 3, and 4, until the word name comes back in on the downbeat. In Lean On by Major Lazer, there's a very clear syncopated rhythm on the subdivisions. You can hear it in the harmony throughout, but it's very clear in the post-chorus breakdown. Listen carefully to the baby voice. Syncopation can also be created by staying silent on the downbeat, or tying it over from the previous measure. I would like to make a more specified video about syncopation in the future, so if that's something you're interested in, please consider joining my Patreon or becoming a member on YouTube. Okay, now that I've done a bit of yapping, let's talk about how you can practice these concepts and incorporate them into your listening or playing. The most important thing for you to practice, hands down, is finding the beat of any song you hear. This is one of those things that you learn once and never have to learn again. And practice-wise, this is where we're going to start and stop today. But where to start? The way I teach this might be a little unconventional, but it's practical and therefore long-lasting. When it comes to finding the beat of a song, you first have to understand how to listen to a song, specifically the percussion. Of course, its job is to keep the beat. Let's break it down really quickly. For the most part, the kick drum, or whatever its equivalent may be, is going to be highlighting those strong beats, 1 and 3. This will be our little kick cymbal. It's sometimes on 1, 2, 3, and 4 as well. This is that 4 on the floor beat we were talking about earlier. The snare typically highlights the weak beats, which would be 2 and 4 in 4/4 time. This will be our little snare cymbal. A lighter part of the percussion commonly holds down the 8th note feel, so each beat and the 8th notes in between them. This is commonly the hi-hat, but can also be something like a shaker or tambourine. This will be our little hi-hat cymbal. And with those 3, you have a very basic drum groove. You can hear this exact groove in Billie Jean by Michael Jackson. But for the most part, songs will have some kind of variation on that groove. For example, the kick might play an 8th note in anticipation of that 3rd beat. Good Luck Babe by Chappell Rowan has this variation as its drum groove. The kick sounds something like this. I want you to listen to this song while intentionally focusing on only that kick sound until you can hear it clearly.
It's fine, it's cool.
Can you hear it? If you can't, don't worry. I'll isolate it for you. You might also need to grab some headphones if you're listening through a phone or built-in speaker. This is what you're listening for.
It's fine, it's cool. You can say that we are nothing, but you know the truth. And guess I'm the fool with their arms out like an angel through the car sunroof.
When the kick stands out, I want you to try to listen for the snare. In this song, the snare sounds something like this. Listen carefully.
You only wanna be the one that I call baby. Mars, shoot another shot.
Once you're able to hear those two things consistently, I want you to tap your foot or clap along to them. In this second box here, which represents beat 2, we have both snare and kick. We're only going to tap on the snare here because it falls on the beat itself rather than the offbeat of 2. So while the beat sounds like this, you're really only going to be listening for this when you tap. Don't worry about the other percussion elements for right now. Internalize that kick and snare pattern using your body. This is the beat of the song. If you're able to clap or tap along, amazing job. You're on your way. If not, please keep trying. This is something that just takes a little practice. Let's continue. If you tap that beat into a tap tempo machine like this one, your answer should be around 117 BPM. It's okay if you waver a little bit, as long as you're within 1 to 2 BPM. Now, using all the knowledge we've learned in this video thus far, we're going to try to find the downbeat of this song. Remember, the downbeat is the first beat in your pattern, no matter the time signature. Another reminder, the kick is typically highlighting the strong beats. This means that in order to find the downbeat, your best bet is to listen to the kick. Using the percussion, I want you to try to find the downbeat. This is the pattern. The downbeat occurs every time this pattern restarts. Listen for that accenting we talked about earlier. The downbeat is the strongest one. Tap along to the beat, and when you think you've found the downbeat, I want you to say 1 out loud. Yes, even if you're by yourself, say 1 on every downbeat. 1, 1, 1. If you can do that, incredible. You're feeling the beat. Now, we're going to fill in the rest. If the downbeat is 1, let's count how many beats it takes to restart the pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 beats in every cycle. This tells me that the time signature of the song is 4/4. There are 4 beats in a measure. Now, it's very important that you say this count out loud. It's one thing to feel it. It's another to say it. It feels weird at first, but it's absolutely necessary to start building this habit. There's a rule when it comes to practicing music. If you can't say it, you can't play it. Just trust me on this one. It's the truth. Okay, lastly, let's address these subdivisions in between. This is where we look to the hi-hat, or the shaker, or the tambourine, or something else along those lines. See if you can hear the hi-hat the way you are able to hear the kick and the snare. It sounds like this. Listen carefully. Once you can hear it, you're going to count along with it out loud. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4.
Sexually explicit kind of love affair, and I cried. It's not fair. I just need a little love, and I just need a little hair.
It's important to try to make this count as even as possible. You want to think of eighth notes as the beat split precisely in half. While tapping your foot or your hand to the beat, observe that while you say the numbers, the foot is on the floor. While you say the ands, the foot is lifted. This can help you keep the count even. This is the process I would use to practice. When it comes to rhythm, changing the way you interact with the music itself is going to be the key. And this is something that you need to practice. Here are some things to know before you practice. The drum pattern throughout a song, especially if played by a real drummer, will slightly vary, meaning they will add fills or the pattern will change with the sections, and so on. In general, some songs are trickier than others, and the BPM listed on the internet is not always correct. Sometimes the kick and the snare are substituted for other sounds that play the same role, especially in pop or electronic music. For example, sometimes instead of snare, pop songs will use a clap. They still normally fall on beats 2 and 4. The other important thing to mention is that in today's recording industry, almost every song, whether recorded live or digitally processed, is quantized to the grid, meaning they're programmed to never fall off that steady beat. Older songs made before the early 2000s will likely waver in tempo, because that's a very human thing and there was no quantization back then. Still, they will mostly remain in the ballpark of a BPM. In this case, you'd choose the closest beat possible for your BPM, which is easy to see when using a tap tempo like this one. So, with that said, here's a little homework. If you want to try this on your own, go ahead and do so with the song Hysteria by Def Leppard. This song has a basic drum groove, and the kick and snare sound really great in the mix. Comment below and tell me what you think the BPM is, and if you found the activity to be easy or difficult or somewhere in between. I've made a playlist of other random songs in 4/4 that have a very obvious beat to them. Practice this process on your own and let me know how it goes. If there are any songs you're having trouble with, let me know and I'll do my best to help. I recommend finding the beat of any song you hear anywhere, even if it's just to yourself. If this is something you want to get better at, you should be practicing it consistently. And when you do, you'll start to get really good at this really fast. You may be wondering, what if the song is not in 4/4? Believe it or not, if you listen to a lot of pop or even classic rock, most of those songs are going to be in 4/4. And I promise to cover those other time signatures very soon. But for now, I want you to focus on these songs in 4/4 and get really good at finding that beat. So I think that's enough for today. I hope that was helpful. I have quite a few rhythm videos currently in the works, so make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you know when those are out. If you subscribe to my Patreon for $5 a month, you'll get early access to those videos, as well as a shout out in each one. Thanks for watching.